In a low and echoing boom, equivalent to the distant roar of a tyrannical beast, an eruption of thunder exploded across the city sky. From above, dark clouds showered the bustling world below with rivers of rain, creating a never-ending haze of mist. From all angles above, lightning zapped from the east and south to the north and west. Some of these charges stayed above, while others barely grazed the tops of the tallest skyscrapers. In this city, buildings massive and wide all stood, some looking better than most, while many appeared to have been structured from scrap itself. In the lower class regions of this city, there stood a building that was as cheap as a salesman in an old car dealership. It was an apartment complex. An old, falling apart complex would have been a better suited name in truth. The building had been around for decades. It had been made up of bricks and stone, with an old 80s interior that more than likely had mold in its carpets. With each crack of thunder, its interior lights would rapidly turn on and off, giving its residents a vast amount of irritation, one of which having the worst of it. Matira's might, come on! Not now! Not now! A voice shouted from behind a closed room door as the power stuttered between life and death in hazy yellow flashes. On the other side, standing within this room that was only lit by a bright blue supercomputer light, stood a figure. A young figure who was only a few months into being 15 years old. Come on, power. Don't fail me now. Not when I'm this close. I think I gotta be close. They said in a nervous manner while tapping sets of synthetic metal-skinned fingers atop the computer's keyboard. The kid's features were unlike anything else this world had to offer. He was about 5 feet in height, while also being rather fit for his age, as well as for his species. The boy's body, although looking robotic on the outside, was actually a protective metal mechanical enhanced shell that contained who he was on the inside. The boy had large blue shoulder spheres that were connected to a pair of wriggly noodle metal upper arms. Connected to these bendable limbs were much larger, thicker, lighter blue forearms that contained many tricks within their confines. This being's legs were similar, except these parts were topped with dark gray, blue striped shorts that ended in a pair of bright white boots tipped with a special kind of symbol. Upon his chest was a mix of bright blue fabric and metal plating that was a type of chest guard. It even had a snug hoodie attached near the backside of his neck. Laying over his chest, that same symbol sat, an upside-down curved triangle symbol that the kid called a spark crest. As for his head and face, it was a unique-looking thing. Unlike his mainly mechanical body, the kid's head was a soft white orb that was all flesh and bone within, one with 6 round horns coming off both his scalp and side cheeks. This strange individual had a pair of large dark eyes with blue irises that faintly glowed with a bioluminescence. Below, there was a small quivering mouth that was made up with 2 sets of cute freckled cheeks. This child's name was Void Novason, spelled with a Y as opposed to an I. He was a member from a long since past era of souls, who vowed to protect all realities and dimensions within existence. Void, for all he knew, was the only surviving member of this technological, magical, and advanced cyborg race who once went by the name the Sparks. Come on! Void groaned with a bundled up fist slammed to the desk by his keyboard, shaking both it and a half coffee-filled mug with the words, "Hang in there" on it. There was even an added cat dangling from a wire printed outside.
Signal low. Unable to record the latest event catalog. Apologies, Mr. Novason.
The computer said with a sad-faced screen that left Void grunting and stepping back in strain. 5 years of this, he thought to himself, with a fueling mix of sorrow and rage. 5 years of roadblock after roadblock. It was suffocating for the young spark, as his mind raced to what he had been trying to do for so long. He had to figure out how to stop them, Void said within a brain-splitting wave of anger. It was getting worse out there. So much worse. Time was running out. If he didn't figure this out soon, it would mean game over for everything his people once swore to protect. I just don't get it! Void muttered in distress as he rubbed his eyes with the face of his palms. They've got to be coming from somewhere. But where? Where? The answer the spark was seeking was like a needle in a haystack. It was just one dimension, one source realm within a sea of infinite possibilities. As Void was attempting to take the moment to just think for himself, to ease his nerves, a familiar sound rang out from the supercomputer, which he had dubbed as Jet. It was a noise that he had grown accustomed to for the last few years. The noise was akin to a car passing by one's window, or the calling of doves in the morning. And all it was had just been a beep. A long, drawn-out warning beep that sent the spark standing upright to his toes.
Glitch detected. Reality tear location pinpointed. Reality number 1736773. Planet Earth. Sending you location now.
Appearing on a rather large computer screen, emerged an image of a city from another world, another dimension. More accurately, a whole different reality. It was a location of great proportions and mass, looking to have come from the 1990s. The current year was 2017 for almost all realities Void had come to visit. So, it appeared he would be taking a blast to the past with this one. Lunar City, it said on the side. Clenching his metal fists, Void squinted his eyes and turned to the side. With booming footfalls, the teenage spark reached for a bag upon a nearby dining table. This item carrier was a deep maroon color of pelt, with a rough patchwork stitching to create the symbol of his people on its front. Inside were small snacks, little trinkets, an old map. More importantly, tons of AA batteries. Pulling two of the little suckers out, Void first swung the bag over his shoulders, and then popped open a hatch on his left arm. Within was a customized set of wires and technological mechanical junk. These pieces were all connected into an internal weapon system that came with Void's biomechanical body. With a click in his right thumb, the spark popped out two old batteries and replaced them with the new ones. Portal opener, 3 charges restored. A small text-to-screen icon read within the limb as Void snapped his arm closed. Looking back to the table, Void reached his metal-skinned hands out and took hold of one more thing. Raising his next item into the light, the spark now held onto a rounded old, dented battle helmet. A spark battle helmet that once belonged to someone very close to him. The helmet looked like a classic knight's face guard, except splashed with a more futuristic sci-fi-like design. It had a pointed visor with that same crest again presented beneath. Within its slim viewer, Void caught the sight of his own reflection looking back at him. His saddened, tired blue-eyed expression that should have been living a normal teenage life, but was instead fighting a one-man war against a race of creatures that had changed his life in the worst possible way. Grunting, the spark connected a magical natural essence from his hands to the helmet, and within a flash, it vanished, then clad itself right over his face. Welcome back, Lady Celeste. The helmet greeted with an old automated voice that registered Void as someone from many years past. With his blue eyes now staring through an activated visor screen, Void swung his left arm out and transformed it into a powerful arm cannon. With it, he raised its barrel up and shot a bright blue light into the wall. Instead of destroying it like any other powerful blast, it instead opened up a portal, one designed in the very same crest shape that practically attached itself upon Void's person. A bright blue, upside-down triangle portal with multiple swirling colors buzzing off its form. Here we go. Void mumbled under his breath as he took one long step, then again, before lunging forwards and jumping into the portal. A reality portal to where this alternate world had been, all in order to make sure it didn't meet the same fate of a world the spark used to call home. Journeys ahead. Draft 2, Chapter 1, The Inevitable Ending. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Splitting open atop the roof of the city's largest skyscraper, Void's portal ignited to life with a beautiful blue light that quickly settled into its upside-down triangle shape. The world in this reality was reigning as akin to the last, with hints of a golden sunset blooming from in between dark and gray clouded skies. The city itself was bustling as any other would. There were cars whizzing and honking on by, pedestrians marching along with their daily tasks in mind, as well as the occasional alley brawl. Everything almost seemed to be normal, but within the vast array of infinite worlds, the term normal was practically non-existent. The residents of the city were walking upright, humanoid-looking squids, ranging from blues, greens, and red skin colors. They were tall, slightly transparent, and glowing with faint internal body lights. Some of these folk even walked literal fish dogs that flopped along the sidewalks on leashes. Anything was possible wherever Void went, and nothing was an impossibility. Leaping through the portal in a long jump, the spark landed upon the city rooftop and came to a slippery, splashing stop. With widening eyes, he gasped and dug his heels deep into the top cement, halting himself before getting any closer to the ledge. Okay, not where I wanted to enter. Void fearfully muttered to himself, with a thudding heart, as he quickly turned away from the long, stomach-twisting view. The spark had greatly hated heights since he was a little kid. The prospect of falling a long way, to feel the rush of blood flip-flop as you inevitably know it may be your end, was something Void greatly feared. It was one of his worst phobias alongside many other things. Okay, where are you? Rearing his hand up, Void clicked the side of his helmet, which released a scan that stretched on for almost 10 miles max. This old helmet of his had been modified in some aspects by his own hands. This was not only to help better himself in a fight, but also help track down the very things that took everything and everyone he had ever cared about. For one moment, Void's visor screen gently flashed red, signifying that the scan was taking place. The next, a ping of blue with added holographic images and coordinates. The thing he was tracking appeared to be chilling out in a junkyard of some type, a little off in the northern sector of the city. Sauer Claw, it was identified as. Bingo. Void tirely muttered as he raised his blaster forwards again and shot another portal to be near this exact spot. Retracting his blaster back into his hand, Void took in a deep breath and pulled his hoodie up and over his head. Can't let the people see me. The spark reminded himself, for if he was caught, panic would surely arise and mess up the whole mission. Everywhere he went, Void felt alienated by his looks. He was the only one of his kind within all natural bound realities. He was unlike anything else. All sparks were, or rather had. Now, he was alone, and figured it was best to stay as such. With a few short steps, Void had gone from the skyscraper's roof and then to the outside alley of a seafood restaurant. Gross. He gagged while covering his face that had a flat, practically non-existent nose. His head skin was both his source of scent and hearing, for he had no ears as well. There was no real good way of explaining how this worked, but that's just what spark biology was like, sort of a one-of-a-kind in terms of who they were. Turning heel, Void shoved his hands deep into his short pockets and began to speedwalk his way through a less populated sidewalk. There weren't many people in his way, but those Void did pass were left with a ponderous gaze. Void was a lot shorter than everyone else in this world. Although covered, he could still feel the stares, the questions of who he was. It made him uneasy, being the only one left. He had no one to turn to, no one to trust. He was a walking and attention-grabbing force in every world he visited, and it was rarely ever in a good light. As Void marched on, he He glanced to the side, seeing a group of friends playing a game of basketball within a playground courtyard. Friends, Void said inside, thinking back to a group of kids he used to hang out with years back. A group of kids who were no longer around. Shaking his head away from the past, Void tried to focus back upon the mission at hand. Gotta stop it before it's too late. Find the portal, take the monster out, and seal, he said, before fully halting to a sight on his left-hand side. Peeking over, Void was met with a view of a glowing yellow window to a city apartment home. Inside, he was able to see a family playing some type of board game around a table. There was a mother, a father, and 2 kids who looked to be twins. As Void took the sight in full, he began to feel his stern eyes soften from the sight. A wave of memories quickly came back into his heart as he recalled upon good times, better times. His mind raced back to the sound of coming home from school and being greeted by his mother's cooking. He recalled when his father would tell him stories before bed, stories of heroism and good-hearted nature. The spark even recalled an older brother who he would always play with in the yard. Sadly squinting, Void took in a long breath, shut his eyes, and turned back forwards. Keep moving, he told himself. No distractions. Fully moving away from the window, Void took another long breath and trudged along, seeing the faint sign of the junkyard in the near distance. Leaving with a flip and landing on the other side in a muddy splash, Void hurled a large gated fence with the words, Salty's Parts, presented upon an old and withering sign. The mix of tension and stress began to fuel the little spark's soul, as he slowly stood back to his full height with clenched fists. Raising his hands up, Void gently pulled the blue hood back, revealing his helmeted head into the dimly lit stormy world. Now, where are you? The spark whispered as he began to march his way down rows upon rows of stacked and crushed cars. These vehicles looked to have either been recently destroyed or rusted away due to time and lack of care. This place was most definitely on its last legs of business, the spark rationalized, to help explain the utter dump the place was. As the rain collided with old cars, it created the sound of soft metal being tapped to echo across the junkyard. It was almost rhythmic in nature, soft, like a little xylophone getting played by a toddler. The noise pricked away at Void's senses, feeling like a woodpecker nailing its sharp beak against his brain. In any other case, it could have been described as a soothing sound for some people, a little tune to distract one from the other sounds in the world. Yet, within the mix of it all, Void could tell that some of these watery taps weren't coming from the cars at all. Just as Void began to think on what it could most certainly be, he saw it. To his right, there was a glimmer of red, blue, and green sparkling colors, surrounding white, glass-like cracks, all fusing into a staticky portal to a realm that he had been trying to find. It was the outline of what Void came to dub as a glitch tear, and it was burning and dancing with molten energy along a set of stacked vehicles. Quickly, the spark raised his right fist up and aimed it at the terror in reality. From the roof of his curved metal arm, he retorted out a sharp, angular device with a needle-like tip at its end. This was a creation of his that he dubbed as the Sealer, and from it shot out an icy blue beam that struck the top of the glitch rift. There we go. Void sighed of relief as he then lowered the beam with his arm. Using this, Void started to seal the tear close, and within seconds, this once dangerous wormhole was no more, closed off with the combined efforts of Void's internal power, along with some basic calculated science he had picked up in school. These broken rifts were the bane of his existence, one-way entries that he couldn't cross, and whenever one appeared, they weren't so far behind. This here only meant that one half of the problem was dealt with. Now it was time to find the real danger. I know you're here! Void shouted aloud, while slowly turning on his heel. Taking slow steps, the blue-crested spark marched his way through the maze of cars. Squinting his eyes, Void tried his best to look through the growing rain and mist, all the while feeling as though he were being watched. Every footstep the spark took sounded to be a branch snapping within a quiet forest. Every drop and pellet of rain seemed to reverberate like a chiming bell that wouldn't cease on a Sunday morning. Senses heightened and growing weary to the inevitable danger, Void began to charge up an energy deep within his soul. Spark essence, he called it. That left sets of swirling birthmarks around his head to bloom into a blue shine. Show yourself. You and I both know you freaks don't like to hide for long. Void beckoned aloud, trying to taunt the monster he knew was near. Amidst this call for action, there came the familiar sharp flash of lightning, large and powerful with a lavender shine. As this purple and white glow ignited the world, it casted shadows of stacked cars upon Void's form. Looking down, he watched as they appeared for only a second, manifesting to be spiraling towers that were much larger than anticipated, an illusion by all natural light. Although these shadows were there for only a moment, Void quickly noticed that something was off. As the lightning created the outlines of almost identical stacked cars, there was something odd about one of them. The shadows that were directly next to Void had the outline shape of a tall, four-legged creature looming above. If it weren't for this strike of electricity, Void wouldn't have even noticed the monster. Gasping and whirling his body around in a sharp turn, the spark locked his gaze upwards to see the glitch in full. It was hunched over, not upon the stack of cars. Rather, had been positioned upon a demolition crane further in the back. The beast stood there upon a wrecking ball, staring the spark down with a flat, glowing greenish eye that was surrounded by a maw of dagger-like teeth. Its body color was a mixture of oranges and reds. It even had the form of some kind of crustacean-type skin or armor of sorts. Surrounding its body were what could only be described as comic book panel dots, outlines that show that the creature wasn't native to this reality, or any reality. The Sauer Claw, Void realized, just one of many variants from an army of reality-breaking monsters, known only as the Glitched. Clenching the wrecking ball's chain with a pair of hefty mitts, the Sauer Claw bellowed a terrifying roar before swinging itself downwards. As it landed with a heavy splash, Void himself took a defensive leap backwards, whilst eyeing down the monster that was about 3 times his own size. As the Sauer Claw settled, and Void readied himself, the beast narrowed its Cyclops eye up to look at the spark who had come for its life. From the Glitch's back sprouted tendril-like whips that were tipped with glowing green stingers. It then raised itself up to be at full height, chest forward and claws clenched in the fist, ready to strike. You guys just keep getting uglier and uglier, Void muttered as the fight got ready to commence. Like a starting gun, another flash of lightning erupted over the lands, being accompanied with a roar of thunder that sent the two beings at each other's throats. In a primal lurch, the Sauer Claw's crab-like legs crashed upon the soaking mud, while Void heavily leaned forwards within his own charge. Throwing his arms in front of himself, the spark contorted both his hands into their large, cylindrical cannon forms and began to open fire. Flying through the air went charges of protonic spark energy that collided with the Sauer Claw's body. Chunks of both orange and red exoskeleton layerings broke away from the Glitch's skin from these attacks, leaving behind burnt gashes of static signal in its place. Howling in an otherworldly tone, the Sauer Claw rose its 4 tendrils up and rammed them into a set of old cars. 2 tendrils striking a truck on the left, while the other 2 took a van on the right. With a slobbery gruff, the Glitch barked loudly as it hurled the 2 vehicles at Void's direction. As the truck soared through the air, the young spark quickly ducked and rolled, just narrowly getting his head skimmed by the old, rusty tire of the vehicle. Then came the van. In a hefty crash, the Sauer Claw threw it to the ground in a violent smash, before rolling it in a sporadic motion at Void. Its parts began to fly in every which way from its tumble, posing as a tricky obstacle for the spark to evade within that few-second time frame. Quickly getting back to his feet, Void only had about 2 seconds to make his next move. As the van neared ever close, the spark, rather than fleeing, charged at the vehicle in a hard sprint. With a kick off the ground, Void left himself up into the air and landed down upon the rolling van. As it turned across the ground, the little spark, using his now height advantage, kicked off the rolling vehicle before he himself was caught in its spinning onslaught. Watching in shock, the Sauer Claw bear witness to the sight of Void now falling to its eye level in rapid seconds. That, when from the roof of the spark's right hand, ignited an energy blade. This weapon was all magic, a crimson blue burning tip with bright purple highlights, posing as a beautiful yet deadly looking form of attack. Raising its right arm up, the Sauer Claw went to defend itself, but was only greeted to the bone-splitting pain of its arm getting sliced away from the rest of its body. From this, the monstrosity released another shriek that rang out across the city, echoing off buildings to surely be carried to concerned pedestrians. Gotta finish this, and fast. Void said to himself as the arm fell to the ground in a fading static light. Now, with time on the line, the spark swiftly took hold of the Sauer Claw's chest and used its leverage to flip himself up and upon its back. Gripping and pulling the monster's sharp-toothed head to the side, Void raised his blade once again and rammed it through the glitch's shoulder. Sparks of static and multicolored liquid now spewed from its wounds as the glitch monster now began to stumble and knock itself back in the towers of vehicles. Where is it? Where's the source? Void demanded to know as he firmly twisted and turned the blade with a cracking sting. Grunting, the beast reached its remaining hand up and clasped Void within its claws. Growling, it quickly whirled itself around and rammed the spark against another set of cars, knocking a few over in the process. With a snarl, the beast cleared its throat and spoke with a hot breath.
You'll never find it, no matter how many of us you track down.
Scowling in anger beneath his helmet, Void quickly contorted both of his hands back into their blaster forms and firmly shot the claws that were wrapped tightly around his body. A mixture of blue exhaust and flying exoskeletal pieces erupted through the air from this attack that made the monster shout. In a world of hurt, the Sauer Claw then titanically roared once more, now realizing it had no hands to use as a defense. As Void dropped to the ground, he quickly reared himself back up and began the rapid fire upon the beast, blowing chunks of its legs away and knocking it back upon the ground. As this transpired, Void couldn't help but think that this one didn't seem to even be trying. It was strange, but he couldn't complain about getting to live another day. Another miserable day. This is your last chance! Where is the source? Void demanded to know, as he then deployed a battle axe from his back. This axe was large and about the same size as his arm. Slim steel, with an energy blue blade emanating from both its front and back. Awkwardly sitting upright with a scowling eye, the Sauer Claw looked to almost spit at the spark and shake its head with disdain. The look of displeasure with a hint of malice is all Void could take away from the monstrosity. It made him sick.
You're fighting a losing war, Spark.
The Sauer Claw growled.
No matter how many of us you destroy, no matter how many rifts you patch, it won't bring them back.
Wincing behind the visor, Void knew time was running short. If he let the Sauer Claw linger for much longer, then another rift would open at any minute. He had to end this now. With a sharp shout, Void reared his axe backwards and took aim above the Sauer Claw. Dangling over its head was the wrecking ball, the one that swayed from side to side in the stormy wind. Without hesitation, Void threw his axe at the chain that kept the mighty ton of steel above the world. Within a mere second, the chain was slashed away, and down came the ball of destruction. The Sauer Claw only saw its fate for a mere moment, but was soon put to sleep, as a hefty amount of weight crashed upon its already broken body. With a loud crunch, a gust of mud and dust erupted from the impact. In response, Void shielded his eyes and looked away from the sight as the disgusting sound of flesh smushing was heard. The monster before him was no more. Another glitched anomaly destroyed. Another reality protected, at least for that moment. Breathing heavily, Void stood there in the rain, and then caught his axe that boomeranged back around into his hand. Taking in long whiffs of air, and then spitting out quivering breaths, Void watched as flakes of static left through the slight cracks in the ground, indicating that the glitch monster had not survived. Retracting his axe into his arm and helmet into the back of his body, Void could only solemnly stare at the destruction around himself. All too familiar, he saw within. All too familiar. Ow. Void then said through clenched teeth upon feeling a sharp pain to his sides. Looking at his metal arms, the spark was able to note long scratches covering his mechanical limbs. Scratches that cut deep. Thankfully, sparks were able to regenerate rather quickly in their youth, but that didn't mean pain was absent. Void was nearly on the verge of tears if he was being truthful. Within the distance, the spark caught the wind of police sirens, most definitely coming to investigate the not-so-quiet skirmish that had just transpired. Shakily reaching into his pocket, Void pulled out a sticky note and a $5 bill. Using his fingertip, he popped out a small pen and wrote upon the now soaking slip of paper. Approaching the wrecking ball, he stuck the $5 bill and note upon it, which read, "Sorry for the skirmish. Hopefully this pays for it," ending in a worried, smiling face. Turning back around, the spark pulled his hood up and over his head and began to trudge off. He needed a place to heal up, somewhere quiet, before returning back to his old apartment. His lonely, little apartment. Clutching his slowly healing, wriggling arms, Void shivered and awkwardly stumbled his way through a rundown backside sector of the city. The rain from above had now grown into a terrible storm, a violent mix of winds and fast-pelting water that felt akin to literal bullets upon the boy's metal skin. "Need to find shelter. Need to heal," were the only words Void had been saying to himself since fleeing the junkyard. From behind, red and blue flashing lights went on and off, creating a faint shadow of the spark that looked to stretch into a figure much larger in shape. It was as though to be a bigger and stronger version of the person Void wanted to be, the person he needed to be. A presence who was far from there just yet. Void was tired, sleep-deprived, and in need of rest. He had now gone 2 whole days without sleeping. The glitches were getting stronger, more active. Day by day, more and more arose. It was a never-ending battle, a war that was in the favor of the enemy, a fight that this poor kid was worried he would lose. Turning to the side mid-thought, Void came across an old warehouse that looked to be abandoned. It was large, made of wood and clearly rotting, forgotten the time, no different than himself. Sealing his thoughts away, the little spark bashed into the side of an old door and stumbled hands and knees first in the stone, rock-covered grounds. Nothing was inside. Nothing but ceiling chains, run-down machines, and a bunch of painless windows which cast in gray afternoon light as well as sprinkles of rain. Ow, 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 ow. Void whimpered as he closed his large oval eyes, focused and carefully healed. "One breath in," he said inside. "One breath out. In and out." With an inhale and exhale, Void did his best to calm his burning nerves, which allowed for his metal skin to seal back over in a blue light. The scratches and outer dents, however, would remain until he could give himself manual repairs, which was getting a lot harder to come by these days. "There we go. Just like Mom taught you. Just like she taught you." The spark whispered with a quivering smile as he summoned his battle helmet to his hands. Just like Mom taught you," he repeated, looking into his own reflection in the visor. "Okay. Time to go home." Standing up with a wince, Void summoned his helmet away and adjusted his backpack. Rolling his shoulders, he popped his neck from left to right until getting ready to shoot a portal back home. Rearing his arm around, The spark prepared the fire, ready to conclude this nightmarish day. And yet, before he could do as such, a noise erupted from the abyss. A distant sound that started off as static before evolving into something far worse. It was a laugh. A devious laugh that Void knew all too well. With his face turning into a scowl, the spark looked over his shoulder and watched as his shadow slowly began to elongate and grow in an absurd way. His rounded image stretched itself all the way up to the back wall to create a blank, tall, floating-limbed, disjointed image that had a floating cube for a head. Within a flash, the shadow detached from Void's own and became an illusion of a being that the spark desperately wanted to destroy. In a flash, a flat, glowing red, diamond-shaped Cyclops eye appeared on the cube's front, as the shadow fully became a flat reflection of a disjointed human being. He was tall and disturbing, a being that caused Void pain for so many years, a taunting demon that would never leave his shoulder. This entity, although just a projection from somewhere in the unknown regions of the Omniverse, was the king of the glitches, the one who had ripped everything away from the spark. This being only went by one name that he had given to himself: Lotus. Well, if it isn't my biggest hater. Actually, you're more like an obsessed fanboy at this rate. Sorry, hard to resist. How you doing there, baby horns? Lotus asked as his shadowy illusion leaned over like a parent about to disown a child. Without warning, Void shot a hole in the wall, causing Lotus to gasp and detach his upper torso from his lower half, creating a safe spot for the hole to open. Woo! He shouted with a shrinking eye, being startled by Void's sudden aggression. Shut up and get out of my head, you scrap snapper! Void spat as he watched Lotus reassemble his flat form along the walls. Yeesh, kid. Can't even bother to say, "Oh great, it's you," anymore? Gotta say, I'm a little hurt. Lotus asked with a roll in his blood-red eye. You know, you should really get some sleep. You're starting to look like the last water balloon that's left at the bottom of a bucket. You know, the one that's a bit smaller than the others. The one no one picks. The illusion of Lotus compared as his eye turned down into a frowning shape, while his hand made a back-and-forth so-so like motion. What do you want? Void demanded in a pained shout as his horns buzzed with a blue burning glow. With his eye returning back to normal, Lotus began to float and drift along the walls, moving in a way that was terrifying for the little spark, even if he wasn't physically there. Oh, you know, I just wanted to congratulate you on continuing to fight a pointless war that won't lead you anywhere. Gotta say, when I destroyed your little reality, I didn't think I'd end up causing a ridiculous goose chase from a moody teen. I will say, though, your dedication is very admirable. The Glitch King said, as his form blended in with the other shadows. One moment, he was his creepy, lanky outline. The next, just a red eye within the dark. Come on, kid, do you really think hopping from one reality to the next is going to help you get any closer to finding me? We've been doing this song and dance for 5 straight years now. And all you're doing is taking out a few of my lackeys every month. The Glitch said with a hard reality check, as he continued to drift along the walls. You do all that while I get to toil away and watch as you struggle. Gotta say, kiddo, this whole quest of yours would make for a great teenage parental issue drama. Really makes my broken existence more enjoyable. Clenching his fists, Void scoffed and turned away from the being that began to spin his cube-shaped head around in circles for fun. I will find a way, you monster! We Sparks had a code. For those we lost and for those we honor. I'm gonna honor them till it's my last breath, do you hear me? Void exclaimed in a world of rage as he turned back to face the one who had taken everything from him. Yeah, I know. You don't think I've peeked into that empty head of yours when you sleep? You're hoarding a lot of trauma, man. Lotus shouted back with a concealed laugh from his all-seeing eye. Say, here's an idea. How about you stop this dumb crusade and I can make some good use of that noggin? The cube then suggested, as he created a shadowed image of a ping pong paddle with the outline of Void's head as the ball. Boing, 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 boing. The Glitch King said aloud in rapid succession as he paddled the head illusion to Void's absolute disgust. Mark my words, you six-sided, one-eyed scrap heap! I will find a way into your reality, and I will stop you. Void threatened with a hard step forwards, causing Lotus to stop paddling and gaze down at the enemy. Ha! Oh, kid, you are a riot. When will you open your dopey eyes and realize that your ending is inevitable? You will die, and I will have full control over all reality. Lotus exclaimed with his eye turning into a happy expression. My people will rule supreme. We will rewrite all these pointless stories into one streamlined narrative.
No more plot holes, no more twists. A single universe where nothing can fall apart.
I will breach into the great beyond and become the all-father of this stupid omniverse.
I will wipe out everything to start anew, and you can't do anything about it.
The king boasted with a raise in his arms. When I take my throne, you'll fall the same as you are now.
Alone.
Lotus exclaimed in his nasty voice as the shadowy illusion grew to only be one large cube against the wall, along with his eye now dwarfing the little spark. I can see it now. You pass away young and alone, kid. You understand that? You hear that? You are alone in this.
And you always will be.
As the demon cackled on from his remarks, it caused Void to shrivel in place and look away as a feeling of tears began to roll down his soft freckled cheeks. But until that time comes, just know that I'll be watching you and eating great eyeball mac and cheese by my sister Solidius. See you around, kiddo! Lotus exclaimed as his shadow began to morph back in the voids. See you around! He dragged on with a blink before disappearing in the void's normal shadow. That was supposed to be a wink. Just thought I'd let you know that. Was the last words the demon said before leaving Void alone once again. In a hurting sigh, Void raised his arm cannon around and blasted open a portal back home. With no words, he marched on through, leaving this reality behind with a growing sense of dread in his soul. Alone. Oh, you're right about one thing, the spark said as he entered back into the apartment complex halls. In a depressed state of mind, Void slowly marched his way from one end of the crummy rundown hall to the other. The only word that could be described to be swirling through the spark's head was just sorrow. Sorrow for what he had turned into. Sorrow for what became of his people. And sorrow for an omniverse that he was fearing he wouldn't be able to save. 5 years, Void continued to repeat inside. 5 years of constant back and forth feelings of hope and disappointment. 5 years of trying to maintain sanity and joy in his heart. You're losing it, he said inside. You're losing it. Materia's grace, when will it end? Void asked himself upon reaching his door and found it to both be locked and stamped with an all-too-familiar pink note. Oh no. Void gasped with a sinking gut. Oh no, 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 no. He tripled the word as he ripped the pink note from the door in a harsh yank. No! Eviction notice, the slip read, as a cold sweat poured down the spark's brow. Evicted? No, this can't be happening! Void wailed, with a sense of dread spilling from his soul. He needed that space. That was home. His home. His only home. It most certainly is happening. A voice said from the side, which caused Void to leap back and shout in sudden fright. Duh! He cried, upon taking note of a shriveled, old, round bear-looking woman with a cleaning cart by her side. It was the apartment complex maid, Void realized. Matira's might, Miss Zelpo. Please don't tell me it's true. I promise I'd have the money on Friday. Void pleaded, as the elderly bear began to vacuum the wall for some unknown reason. I am sorry, but it is true. You were 1 month behind, so we threw all your stuff out the window. Miss Zelpo said without any facial responses, as she appeared to not be vacuuming anything at all. You what? Void exclaimed with a newfound urgency as he ran past the old lady who just remained brain dead in place. Dusty walls, she mumbled while continuing to move the vacuum cleaner up and down.
Turn that thing off!
A man from a nearby room shouted, not affecting Zelpo in the slightest, as she continued on vacuuming. I do love people. Running to the back alley within the rain, Void came to a sliding, splashing stop upon seeing his supercomputer in complete shambles and residing beside an overflowing dumpster. Beside it was his table and all other smaller items he had held onto. No! Void shouted with a panicked soul as he ran up and looked down upon the steaming, short-circuiting computer, the only device that allowed him to track the glitched and protect other worlds. No, please! Still be in one piece. Still, please! The spark said aloud as he began to violently rummage through the scrap pile. Please. Oh, thank Lord Seraphim. Oh my god. Yanking his hand out, Void sighed with both relief and irritation as the computer's hard drive was still intact. Quickly, he shoved the item into his back pocket, then slumped against the dumpster in defeat. Looking at his surroundings, all Void was able to see was what he had left, now being shattered before his very eyes. Even the mug from before that gave him a salt pinch of care now rested in 100 little pieces. With a face quivering with strain, Void sat by the dumpster, tucked his legs into his chest, and huddled into a ball. Everything was falling apart, literally and metaphorically. Rearing his non-modified arm around, Void propped open the hatch with an audible click, which revealed what was inside. Resting within was an old teddy bear, one with withering brown fur and a missing button eye. Beside it was also an old photo frame from a few years back. Reaching inside, Void gently took out both items and set them in between his legs and chest. The photo was of him, his older brother, and his mom and dad, all out on some kind of camping trip. They were happy, smiling with glee and joy. Looking at the teddy, Spark reached out with a shaking hand and pressed his finger into its tummy, which caused a voice to play from an internal speaker.
I love you, Void.
It said with his mother's voice. She had made this doll for him when he was very young. It was an item she crafted when signs of anxiety began to rise within Void. To the sound of her voice, the Spark couldn't help but continue to shed his tears while shaking his eyes, a trait he retained from his very same mother. He missed them, all of them. For all he knew, these were the only remnants of what remained of his old life. With a quivering lip, Void rested his head on the teddy bear and continuously played his mother's message over and over again.
I love you, Void.
It repeated, only making the Spark feel more shattered in his place. I want to wake up. I miss you. I just want to wake up from this hell. I want to wake up. Void mumbled as he now held both items close within the cold rain. Wake up. Wake up. The Spark pleaded, wishing that this wasn't reality. Please, let me wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Void repeated again and again, until getting snapped back to the world, but not awakening in a warm bed, or with that familiar beep. Within the last bit of life the computer held, it spoke out one last finding that got Void to slowly turn his head.
Glitch detected. Reality tear. Location pinpointed. Reality 82558251. Planet Earth. location now.
Squinting his eyes, Void read the cracked, buzzing blue screen, seeing that Earth was spelled without an A. Beside it was an image of a city that looked to have been two unlikely halves mashed together. One side was fancy looking, while the other was more or less run down and cheap, having been connected by a large bridge over a river pass. Aurora City. It said in big, bold words that got Void to collect himself. Who names Earth like that? He asked, while slowly putting his most cherished items away. With a grunt, Void stood to his full height, wiped his tears, and frowned. It was a cycle, he told himself. A never-ending cycle. The blue swirl and glint of warm light, Void once more deployed his helmet and trudged forwards, all the while saying, "Here we go again." Upon crossing through to what he thought would be another in-and-out hunt for what he was starting to believe to have been a now pointless crusade.